Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another digital workshop that we're offering on Facebook Live. Today, we're going to be talking about how to research potential employers and why you should. It's always a good idea to research any employers that you might be applying for open positions for, because not only will it help you during your application process, but it'll also help you figure out if this employer is a good fit for you and your career path, if you would enjoy it long term and things like that. So, we're going to discuss why you should do this, when you should do this, and how to do it. And lastly, how you can use any research that you find to make yourself stand out in an employer's eyes throughout the application process. Firstly, why should you even spend the time doing this? This is Researching an employer is very important if you have the flexibility to be able to spend time researching them, because you can determine if this is somewhere you would like to work long term. If you have that kind of flexibility and can really be specific about where you choose to work and what kind of positions you would like to work in, you want to make sure that where you go, you could see yourself for a long time so you don't have to job search again, a year or two later. It's also helpful to be knowledgeable of the employer during your application process, because if you can point out those details from your research during in your resume or during your interview, it'll really make you stand out amongst all the other applicants because you took the time to research the employer, and now they know that they won't have to spend as much time training you as they would other people, because you already have a solid foundation of understanding about what that business or organization does. So, when should you research these employers? The best time really to do it is before you even decide to apply to a position. But again, this is based on the flexibility of time that you have on how long you can wait to apply for a job. But if you're able to research ahead of time, you'll be able to determine if it's even worth your time to get together a resume or a cover letter or whatever materials you might need to apply, because after a short amount of research, you might find out, this isn't where I want to spend, the next 10 years of my life or 5 years. Or maybe this position isn't as good for me as I thought it was initially when reading the job posting. But if you don't have time to do it before you apply, you definitely want to do it once you have an interview scheduled. It is very obvious to employers if you walk into an interview and don't at least have a general understanding of what that employer does and your role in the organization as a whole. And if you research extensively, you can blow them away with some of the things that you remember from your research, and even more intensively suggest, how they can improve and how you can be part of that improvement. So, a lot of the questions that we get from customers about researching employers is, where do you even begin? Definitely the number one place you want to look at is the employer website. Read this, all the tabs, all the links, definitely before your interview. Because even if you don't think that it applies to you specifically in the position that you're applying for, it's good to know as much information as you can about that employer before you walk into your interview. Next, and this is something that's really easy to do before you apply to a job, is just do a quick Google search on news articles by using this link. If you go to news.google.com and search the business or organization along with, the town, if it's in outside of Chautauqua County, you will be able to see all of the news articles that have been posted about them recently. And just by looking at the titles, you'll be able to tell, is this somewhere that I want to work? Are they getting positive media attention? Does it show that they're expanding? All those kinds of things. Next, you want to check out their social media. And this is helpful to figure out the culture and the workplace environment. Are they posting a lot about what their staff is doing? Are a lot of their employees on LinkedIn, to be able to find out about the staff that works there? And lastly, it'll also help you see through the eyes of the client or customer they're trying to serve. Their social media appeals to the audiences that they're trying to reach. So it'll give you an idea of the programs and services they offer and the kind of demographic they're trying to reach. Next, you want to check out employer reviews. Another great thing to do really fast before you apply to a job. You can look at reviews for businesses on Glassdoor and Indeed. Smaller companies might not be on there, but larger ones definitely will, and you can see how employees felt about working there. And take this, like you would any review. Some of them might not be entirely truthful, but it'll give you a general idea of what the workplace environment is like. And then lastly, the employer materials. Look at their annual reports, their newsletters. This will show major accomplishments that they've had, maybe some stuff about their finances, even. So, definitely something you want to check out. What should you research? First, you want to get a good idea of the employer, their mission, their history, definitely the products and services that they offer. That's a big one. How large they are, is this position bigger than you thought it was because now you're seeing how many other people are in the company? Or is it smaller than you thought it was? Maybe it seemed like a really prominent position when you're reading the job posting, but when you look at the website and determine the size of the organization, you realize it's not as big as you thought it was. So definitely something to look into. Their current position. This is really from news articles that you find or anything about their finances. Are they succeeding or are they failing? Are they sustaining or are they growing? And then lastly, if you have the time, look up the industry. Where does this company or organization fit into their industry? Are they a well-known name? Who are their competitors? Next, you want to research the position that you're applying for. You want to get a good idea of a description of the job because not all postings are extensive about what you'll actually be doing on the job. Try to figure out what the day-to-day overview of the job looks like. Look at what department it's involved in and what that department does. Or see if you can find other people who are in this position on LinkedIn or YouTube or anything like that to see what their work life is like. Out the workplace environment from those reviews that we talked about. And then lastly, look into the staff, especially if you can figure out who your supervisor would be. They will most likely be in on the interview. And the more information you know about them and their position, the better. Now, if you really want to impress the employer and knock their socks off with your knowledge, do a little analysis while you're researching. Figure out, what their needs are. Where are the gaps, that you can fill by being an employee? Who are their competitors? And where do they stand with them? What is it that that employer and the competitor share? What makes the employer that you're applying for special and have strengths over the competitor? See if they're doing any kinds of expansions. Are they opening a new office? Are they starting a new department? Are they hiring a lot of people for a specific project? And then lastly, the customer client perspective. If you can get that point of view of a customer or a client, it will only make you better at your job because you can explain how you would appeal to those customers or clients, how you would work with them specifically in detail in your interview. So we're just going to do a small case example. This is a position and a company that was hiring in September of 2018. The organization is Big Brothers Big Sisters in Erie County in Buffalo, and the position is a mentor advocate. So let's say you get an interview, for this position. What's the first thing you do? Check out the employer website. So you can find employer websites just by simply Googling, the organization's name. And this is a really good place to look because it really lines out everything that that organization does. And the first place you want to check out is the About tab. You can see who the staff is, their reports right there. They have their mission statement, their vision, what they want to have accomplished. And you can take this and see, how can I support this mission, and incorporate that into your application or your interview. Next, you want to look up news articles, right? Even maybe do this before you get to the interview portion and see, do they have positive things being said about them? I would say yes. It's about their programs. If there's the word expanding in there, that's good. Naming their first woman president, that's a milestone for Big Brothers Big Sisters. It's something you can mention at your interview. you know and if they talk about any kind of recent event, you want to mention that. Tons of different materials you can use. If you don't have the time, just look at the titles, but definitely if you're preparing for your interview, read the articles. Then you want to check out their social media, their Facebook account. You can see on here that they post very regularly about their bigs and littles in Big Brothers Big Sisters. So they're really trying to appeal to try and get people to volunteer, to spread awareness about what they do. That seems like a big one to them. It's very personal. And if you realize you're in a specific department or program, you can search for it here. And you'll see all of the posts that have that word in it, or maybe your supervisor's name, put that in there. Any kind of searching that you can do on their social media is really going to help you understand the culture and really the front line of what they want people to think about their organization. Check out LinkedIn. See if they're on LinkedIn. Not every business will be, but if they are, it's a really valuable tool for you. And you don't need to have a LinkedIn account to be able to search for the organization. You can just Google it, linkedin.com, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Erie County, and click on it and see it. But if you want to fully utilize what LinkedIn offers, you will have to create an account. For example, see all the employees that work at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Erie County. This way you can look at, okay, what of the ones that I can see, what positions are related to my job, right? Maybe this case manager if you were a mentor advocate, you would work with a case manager. Maybe you went to the same college as them. You can see that they're recently employed. You want to reach out to them then and see maybe if they'll give you some information about what it's like to work there, what it's like being a case manager. That works very well with entry-level employees, and you can reach out to them right on LinkedIn, or you can try and go to the website and see if you can find their email on the website. Anything that you can find in common with staff members there that are related to your job will help you in your interview, especially if they end up being in on that interview. Next, check out the employer reviews. Now, Big Brothers Big Sisters is on Indeed. So when you go to Indeed.com, usually it takes you to the Find Jobs section. But you want to click over here to Company Reviews, put in the location, and the organization. If they have more than one name, search all the names that you can to try and find it. And you'll see that they have a rating of 3.6, which isn't bad. Really, anything above like a 2.5 is pretty good for employers, especially if they don't have a lot of reviews. This is kind of a small organization, so they don't have really that much. But if you look at the reviews, you'll see generally they have pretty good ratings. Understaffed and underpaid. It'll be a realistic idea of what it's like to go into this organization, but it says that you're working with excellent people, and this is pretty common, the understaffed and underpaid for nonprofit organizations. Supportive, rewarding, quiet if you don't like a lot of gossip. And again, this is back in 2014, so that changes with the people. Fun place to work, great people, become a part of something bigger. These are pretty good reviews for an organization. And then lastly, you want to check out employer materials. You know, they have Big Brothers Big Sisters has an annual report. Reports and newsletters are the most common. So if you just Google the name of the organization along with any other names that they go by, because sometimes they might have like a name, but then they'll have their legal name. And you can find that from any, document that they put out about the organization will have their legal name. So this is the annual report from 2018. You could also just go to the website because it was listed on there as well. But this gives you an idea of what they want people to know frontline first about Big Brothers Big Sisters. You can learn a little bit about the CEO. You can learn about any changes, or improvements they're making. It looks like they're making a new logo, helpful to know that information going into your interview. What it means to be a big brother to a little brother. It seems like they have a lot of donors. That's always a good sign. And then sometimes even they go into finances. This is all really good information to have before you go into an interview, and to be able to use some of the language that they use in the report or newsletter helps a lot as well. So going through all of these materials that we researched, you can learn these things, looking into it extensively. The mission, the history. We saw that the founder was Robert Moss on the annual report. So you can Google Robert Moss and figure out, how did this organization start? Is it new? If you look at the articles we found, you'll see that they're very successful. Their finances have grown, they're spreading out, they're winning awards. You can look at all of the products and services that they offer on the website. And if you research it, you'll see that the mentor advocate position is part of the group mentoring program. So that's the one you really want to know inside and out. The size, they're the second largest in New York State. You can find this out from articles and the report, how many youth they serve. And lastly, the industry. If you really have the time, look up, what that industry is like right now. Like what other organizations are offering mentoring services in Buffalo. And, look over the position, the description. You can figure out what department it's a part of, what you'll be doing in the job, the day-to-day operation, from finding other people who've done this job, because there are multiple mentor advocates at Big Brothers Big Sisters. You can see it's a lot of driving, communication, paperwork. You've researched the staff, who the executive staff are, and then those that relate to your job. And this is really important when you're applying as well, because if you can find out who the human resources person is, that's who you want to address your cover letter to. That's who you want to address your email to when you're sending them your resume. And then if you can make an estimate of who your supervisor would be, and for mentor advocate, that would be the director of programs, you can look a little bit into who might be in your interview. So this is all stuff that you can gather from researching ahead of time, figuring out what the environment is like from those reviews that we saw. And to really impress Big Brothers Big Sisters, you can work out their needs from this research. They need to continue growing, keep up the momentum. You can think about who their competitors would be, how you would keep volunteers with Big Brothers Big Sisters and gain more volunteers, because that seems to be their number one thing based on their social media, is getting volunteers. They're expanding to the Seneca Nation, Olean County. You can see this from the news articles that we found. The client perspective, it's a popular brand, it's easy to join and participate, even go through a little bit of the process to see how to become a big brother or big sister, to see if it's easy to participate. And once you do all of this, take that information, really feel like you can write this out, do a full report. It could be pages long, the information that you find. but you want to incorporate it into your application and definitely into your interview. If you're using your application, you have a cover letter, bring up the programs that you would be involved in and how you would serve those 700 youth, for example. Or if you were in your interview, see if you can drop names, from the research that you did, or mention new programs they're developing. Use the research to develop the questions you would ask an employer at the end of the interview. By doing all these things, you are for sure going to blow that employer away with the amount of knowledge you have on the organization. And yes, it's going to take time, but you are more likely to get a job this way than just by sending out your resume and not doing any research and not looking into what the business does when you get to the interview. And that really ends up being, a greater amount of time than it would be to research the businesses that you really care about working for. Now, if you have any questions about what we talked about, you can contact our office. We are still accepting calls, and our secretary can refer you to a career specialist like myself to help you with how to research employers, especially if you're not that comfortable on the computer. We are totally fine with helping with assistance for that. And just really quickly, want to check and see if we have any questions. I don't see any here. So if you come up with any, later on, feel free to give us a call. And we look forward to seeing you, being on your computer screen at our next digital workshop.